What if you were able to meet a healer and she was able to help you tap into your divine code? Michelle Hobson has multiple gifts that can help rewire your life. I talked to Michelle, the light language queen, about these gifts. Here we go. I want to welcome everybody to the show. And we have Michelle Hobson on the show today, and she is a quantum field healer. So I want to say welcome, Michelle. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, John.
It's very, very interesting. We were trying to catch up and finally made this thing happen. And we have some things in common. So tell me a little bit about these gifts that you have. And you said you've had these since you were a kid. What has been the evolution of that in your life?
Well, I was raised pretty religious. And so I was told often that my gifts were not good, like demonic type of thing. So when I saw through different aspects of dimensions, it was often identified as like an entity, right? And we know that to not be true today, right? So often I would see people like mediumship was actually how I first started my business, was doing a lot of mediumship and readings, connecting people with their loved ones that had passed. And I found it to be kind of redundant. That's great for some people, but I just felt like, your grandma that died 20 years ago is reincarnated and she doesn't really want to sit here and have a conversation with, do you miss her and things like that. They're just very like human aspects. It just didn't add up to me. And it's hard to tell someone that, right? That, they have those capabilities. And then as a child, it was often a lot of gaslighting, where it's like my parents didn't know how to handle a child that sees things that they can't explain or know something that was going to happen. And then all of a sudden it happens. And people, I think my parents did the best they could because they were raised in a religion. So they don't really know how to handle somebody like me that can speak to people who've already passed or know things that I shouldn't have known. But I at this point in my life, my parents are definitely more open than they were when I was a child, for sure.
Interesting. Now, you said you could see things. Mm-hmm. Now, my daughter, I can relate to that because my daughter has slept with the lights on pretty much her whole life. And my enlightenment kind of started later in life. And when this started for her, we had some intuition of what was going on, what was not going on. But now that we have been in Charleston, South Carolina for almost 5 years now, she has a whole warrior team surrounding her bed. And wherever she goes, she has one of them will go with her wherever she goes. Does that similar to what was going on with you?
Yeah. So I experienced a lot of psychic attacks when I was a child. I didn't realize that's what they were. It's very interesting because as a child, you just think that's normal, right? When you start to understand things and you're like, wait, not everybody has this ability. And especially like being raised in a religion that I was raised in, they identify your intuition as something that's outside of you. Like it's a gift, like I'm going to give you a gift, but only if you're obedient and only if you do this. And I quickly realized like my intuition was always there. So for me, it was like almost like a cognitive dissonance of not understanding. But I have a child now who's highly gifted. Obviously I help her and walk her through things of what she's experiencing. And she works a lot with dragon energy. And she works in the angelic realms quite often. And so I can kind of relate to that. But I feel like for me, it was a connection with the higher energy source, which I identified as God at the time in a religion aspect of God. Obviously now I know that's not necessarily truth for me, but I think that source is within us, not outside of us. And so I would say as a child, I was pretty divinely protected in a lot of ways. I was born super sick. I had a cleft palate when I was born. I was like told I wasn't going to live. And so I think that also changes perspective of people's having to be in a hospital quite often and being left alone. That's the other thing too. I was left alone a lot because my parents had to work. So I was left in a hospital bed by myself. Typical American people, like two people had to work. And so I think that's where I learned really to just like trust here. And I'm super independent, which obviously we know that's a trauma response, right?
So how do you implement this into your real life?
Well, we're very different from the rest of our external reality. We live in Idaho, so that's pretty dominant, like Mormonism. And so we're very different. And I just tell my kids, like, we celebrate our authenticity, and we've learned we're not everybody's cup of tea and it's okay. Like, we're not meant to be everybody's cup of tea in a society that's broken.
So you're married?
Yes, I am.
So what does husband think about everything?
He's really open to it. So we had been married, I think like 2-3 years, and he's lost some cousins and they came to visit us one night. We were just like hanging out. It's like, do you have a cousin that looks like this? And he was like, yeah. And I like described what he looked like. He also had an uncle die on D-Day, and I was able to download how that happened and all the details of it. And I had never read anything about it. Right. So he's definitely a believer, and he's very supportive.
So when you go on this journey, you're searching. I started searching when a Reiki master told me that my bloodline was from John the Baptist. And I was in the middle of this enlightenment. And this has been about 4 years ago. Her name was Tina Clark. And I didn't know if she's full of shit or what. You know what I mean? I was like, either she's trying to hustle me and she's full of shit. It's a hard pill to swallow when you hear things like that. And I just kept going, and everything has aligned based on that information. Are you still searching for anything to figure out exactly, more alignment for you and what you do?
I just feel like I haven't quite found exactly, it's like a journey, it's like you learn. I downloaded Reiki before I was ever taught it. And then I was certified in hypnosis. And then I started to notice that I could regress people and then bring in the higher self. And then I learned about Dolores Cannon and her modality, and I realized I was doing something very similar. That's kind of how I work, though. It's like something comes in. I'm very clairvoyant. So it's like something comes in and I just try to figure it out. So right now I'm actually downloading a modality that's specifically to recode DNA systems. But I haven't really taken a whole lot of courses. A lot of stuff that I do is self-taught, self-downloaded. And for me, I don't feel like I'm at where I want to be. So I'm currently downloading a modality that I know is here to like recode DNA sequencing, and it's very specific. And so I know like that's part of my purpose. Just talking about it makes me lightheaded because it's a lot of high energy. And so I know that's part of my purpose. And I feel like just as society moves and progresses, then we're able to download higher frequencies and get higher and more ancient technology and information because our bodies are able to hold that energy. And I feel like the Earth's frequency has shifted actually quite a bit. I feel like it really shifted in like October, like the middle of October. And I feel like since then I've been able to easily download things and get information easier than it was before. So for me, it's not like I'm searching outside of myself. It's more of having the energies to be able to download the information that I am actively starting to remember.
Well, it's funny for me because it's like I just have this information in me, and I have this information that I know and I stand on. And a lot of people will question me. But now that I've had this realization about where I come from, a good lawyer told me that I'm too old to believe in coincidences. And for something to align was told to me 4 years ago from multiple sources. You start to build a little bit of a foundation and grow some confidence, because I think it's tough building confidence with these things to the public. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. I think a lot of people just look at the surface and don't really look at the struggle, right? Because I think I'm here to maybe explain the struggle and give it some foundation, as what we discussed before. So is there any thoughts about the struggle and really what you go through in your life?
Oh, the struggle's real. The struggle's real. And it's to be a disruptor. I call myself a disruptor because I think that when you hold an energy of authenticity and being yourself, regardless of where you're at in society, whether it's accepted or whether it's not accepted, that's an energy that's not, I call it courage. It's not an easy energy to hold, and to be able to really stand in that power no matter where you're around. Because I think oftentimes, and I notice this a lot in society, is that people will chameleonize themselves in order to fit into society. I'm not going to do that. I don't care if I don't fit into society. And I think the struggle is the loneliness of this journey.
You feel like you're on a limb because nobody understands what you're saying.
Yeah. When you're talking like a different language, when I have to have a conversation with somebody, it's almost like you have to water yourself down in some aspects. I try not to, obviously, but like my daughter dances and we'll be in a dance situation and everyone will be all up in arms. And I'm like, people are really just cool. I'm not going to get huffy puffy about it. Like I just don't, I'm just like, whatever.
I mean, what is that like being a mom? I mean, do people respond to you when they see you coming? Do they know what you do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People know that like they'll say, did you get something from me? Or I'll say, I'll notice people's body language. Obviously, like when I took NLP, you learn a lot about body language and how people respond. And even in hypnosis, like people's body moves with certain emotions. I'll say like, are you okay? And they're like, don't read me. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not going to. It's like things like that, right? And so I think the biggest thing I'm seeing in spiritual community really is, for me, it's really about ethics and making sure you're allowing someone the opportunity to have a consent access to whether or not they want information. And that's where I'm at. Like, I'm not going to just go into someone's field and be like, by the way, you have an entity attached to your da-da-da, even though I see it. But it's also to the point where it's like, I have to function in a 3D reality while I simultaneously see my subconscious and things like that. And they're not in this space. They're here, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a mom, I think it's really, really amazing because my daughter will be in situations and people will comment like how mature she is, how emotionally mature she is. Things will happen emotionally and she'll just like walk her way out of it. She doesn't allow energy to like stick to her. She's very conscious about energy. And sometimes she'll come home and be like, I need you to clear my field. It's sticky. Like she's starting to feel it. So it's like raising conscious children is really amazing until it's like you have to interact with other people who are not conscious. And I have to teach my children and say, they don't understand. And you have to, and like I'm teaching them empathy and connection because I'm a big advocate of like, we're all connected. We're all one, right? So it's just another aspect. And it's teaching them that perspective, right? Of being able to understand that there's a reason why we were put in this place that we're at and we live in. And there's a reason why we interact with the people that we interact with. And sometimes it's not fun holding the higher standard, holding that energy of I'm a being of light. Like there are days that it is hard.
How do you convert what you do to a business?
So I teach a lot of workshops and I also have my own certifications. So I think that everyone should have the ability to do their own healing. I've just seen a lot where people think they need to be codependent on somebody. And that to me is like, no, I guess from my perspective, being raised in religion, that's the last thing I want someone to have. Because what it is I teach people how to like hijack your ego, how to work in the subconscious, how to embody God codes. How do you learn to love the unknown? How do you learn to tap into your guides? How do you become your own guru? It's really about this empowerment aspect of me teaching people, how do you take from where you're at, which is essentially just barely awakened, and how do you learn how to be your own powerful guru?
I feel like you're standing on something. One thing, I feel like there's something that, I don't know if it's your soul contract or whatever it is. I feel like you're standing on something that you're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I'm currently downloading it and it's a lot of energy and I have to do it in sections. So I'm writing a book about it. And yeah, so I do like a section and it's so much energy that it makes me, I have grounding sheets on my bed and I have to write it all out on my bed. It makes me dizzy. And when I start to get information, I get really lightheaded and dizzy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta write this down. So as soon as I get it out on paper or I type a lot in my notes on my phone, it goes away. And sometimes I'm like, okay, guys, I'm at a dance competition. I cannot receive a download right now. Like I have to be in mom mode. I'm in my human. Please stop. So I'm dealing with that right now. And it's a lot, but I'm excited. And I do know this is what I'll be known for.
Well, you're just saying technical information to help you execute what you do.
Yep, exactly.
What do you see that's different about this download?
It's specifically working with DNA strands. So what I see is that what the Mantis Beings showed me was that the DNA system essentially has been scrambled. So we can even go back in like ancient books, right? The Bible, for example. It was like 900 something years old, right? And all of a sudden we're barely living to 100. Mm-hmm. Like I think my grandmother was considered, pretty well had lived her life and it was 95. We're not meant to only live 100 years. We're meant to live, over 1,000, even more years as humans. The DNA has been scrambled is what I was told. And so even when you go get DNA testing, the MTHFR gene, right? That's a big one. You don't process, certain artificial vitamins. You don't detox properly. And I know this because I have this DNA sequencing and it's misspelled. So what happened is, why is that misspelled? Well, because trauma can cause issues, right? We have genetic disorders, but what caused those? I have two people in my husband and my son are both type 1 diabetics. So my mission is, how do I get rid of that?
When you think about DNA, I think it goes back to what we discussed, is understanding the foundation and understanding alignment of the 4 pillars. Because I had this information come through creation of 4. And I actually was talking to this Jessica Taylor, and she was channeling this Palladian guy. And this guy in this conversation I had with him, he said he felt like he was being pulled. He said they felt like they were being pulled to where I was in the center of this 4-pillar concept and creation of 4. So when you think about that, when you think about a non-conscious being, we understand our environment. We can understand a non-conscious being, right? We can teach people how to handle things if their alignment is correct. Because if we align people based on their directions, their health, wealth, success, if we align these things, you eliminate the bad customer. What I do could complement this piece because you have to have that alignment to figure out where the misdirection is in the DNA. Now, how do we know that this mantis is on our side? Because I know there's fractional information out there. Everything is of source and everything is a fraction of source. How do we interpret what information is good and coming from a good entity? How do we interpret that?
Well, I think you ask, are you a being of light? Because they have to, I mean, that's part of the universal laws is they have to reveal, right? So you have to say, are you an embodiment? So when I download things, I set myself a container. So what that means is I have my benevolent ancestors and my guides create a container. And I say, the only beings allowed in this space are beings of light, beings of God consciousness, beings of source. Now that's me only consenting to those energies in that space. So I believe that intention and setting sacred container, I'm not downloading information in my car. I'm downloading information in my home and in a sacred container. So for me, it's very much intentional. I can't just sit and have a conversation. I can't actually have a conversation with these mantis beings out in public. The energy's too much and it will literally, I get nauseous. I get really, really almost lethargic because it's so much energy in my body. So if I'm grounded in a container and in a space where I can receive, then the energy is able to bring forward. I think a big thing for me is discernment and being able to decipher whether or not something is of light and then getting the information and then asking source, is this information directly from you? Is this coming from the light system? And I think it's like checks and balances and being aware that everyone's going to have some form of distortion in their field. That's why it's important to have checks and balances and learning those techniques. That's what I teach in my certifications is it's important to constantly do spiritual hygiene every single day. And that's something that I'm a big advocate for. And being able to have, that's where that goes back to having tools is do you have the tools to be able to clear up your field if you do have distortion? And if you do have distortion, you need to stop working with people and give yourself time to clear it out.
Where are these beings in the pecking order? What makes them have this information about the DNA?
I think every beings have their own technology and information. I know when I channeled them, I got that they were 12D Mantis Council. I know they live on a ship. They do not have a planet. And I asked kind of around. I was like, I'd never heard of anyone who'd ever heard of Mantis Beings. So they was super new to me. And so I asked a couple of people that I know are higher dimensional channelers and they're like, whoa, you're channeling Mantis Beings. And I asked them some questions and it lined up to what they had channeled as well. So it's nice to kind of have those checks and balances with people to be able to kind of see some validation. I don't typically look for a lot of validation from other people. It's really just about not embodying any doubt in your channel and really, is this aligned truth? And having tools. Tools is a huge thing in being a channeler.
Now, have you looked at your lineage, bloodline and did you have anybody in that line that had some abilities, maybe a couple generations back that you know of?
I've talked to my aunt before. She says she's pretty sure she has some abilities. My mom claims she has abilities. I know my dad's side is pretty much Scottish, and my mom's English and French. But when I work with my ancestors, I get a lot of that, more of that Scottish, Irish energy from them. I look very different than the rest of my family. My family all has dark hair. I'm naturally blonde and I have green eyes. They all have blue eyes. So I look very different than them as well. So definitely the pattern breaker in my family, which I've noticed a lot. People have distinct different patterns. So yeah, definitely a pattern breaker in the family.
Well, I think it's that Scandinavian gene is poking its head out. They were the engineers of the world. And if you landed in Scotland, you landed in Ireland, wherever you landed, you're going to claim that. But A lot of people don't realize that if you look at old Scandinavians, they look like Native Americans. And I think that bloodline resonates a lot in that part of the world. Because I can look at people and look in their eyes and tell that there's something going on there.
My eyes have actually gotten lighter as the more I heal. They used to be a really, really dark green, and they're like now almost like a blue green at this point. I actually have a picture. It's very fascinating to see how much lighter they get. The more healing I do, the lighter my eyes get.
Now, if you were going to dial into me, you pick up anything from me or anything, what would you do?
John, I think that you have a lot of information that I think you just need to start writing down. You also have a voice, and that's your medicine, is that you have a platform and a voice that you're utilizing. We need people like you. We need people like you that take somebody like me who doesn't have that platform and is able to broadcast it. And there's a few select people that have this medicine, and I'm seeing you being able to spread truth to the ability that no one else can. Right? And you're able to take that medicine that you have, which is your voice. Your voice is your medicine, by the way. And you're able to broadcast that in such a way that people can receive it. You're able to take the energy of whether, like, someone like me that's kind of sitting here, and you're able to bring it down and be able to put it into different frequencies, almost like the ability to take a radio station and put it and broadcast on various stations so that people can hear it. I'm getting like full body chills. Does that resonate for you? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I got chills now myself.
What a gift, by the way. That's such an incredible gift.
And I feel what's weird is like sometimes like last night when I was laying in bed, I feel like sometimes my whole body is pulsating like light, like through my hands, my arms, my legs. Even when I did this thing, like sometimes when I get off here, I'll send energy to whoever I'm talking to. And I did this with Jessica Taylor. And she can see stuff. She said she could see like this light around my head when I was doing that. And someone said I was in the middle of this whole thing. And it's very interesting. Like I got the instinct. You're very foundational because you have an internal confidence that's coming from a deep location, in whatever that location is. I think there's something to that because I have something that's very similar. No matter how many people disagree, I will stand on what I know, even though they disagree with me. I'm like, this is real information. Why are you trying to have an opinion about real information?
Yeah,
opinions are not the answer for everybody that's out there. Opinions have no validation. Opinion is an ego-driven direction. So unless you have facts, I don't think you should get in a discussion with me if it's something I know. If I don't know the answer to something, I don't talk.
Same. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I can kind of see that in you as well. Have you always been that way your whole life?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like being gifted your whole life, you're going to think you're crazy, right? So you have to start finding that foundational aspects within yourself and confidence to be able to harness truth, even though that's part of being a disruptor, right? I remember being in the 6th grade having a conversation. They were talking about landing on the moon. And this is kind of how I've ticked my whole life. Everyone in the whole entire classroom of 30 kids, they're like, oh yeah, it's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying it. You guys are all buying it? I don't buy this. Like, this is not, I'm sorry. I just don't think this happened. And that's how I've been my whole life, is like being able to call it out. Like everyone's going straight and I'm going to be like, I think I'm going to take a left. Like, I'm not a follower.
Well, when you speak about the moon, and I've mentioned this before too, but when you speak about the moon, I've had this thing about the creation of 4 and how we've been told the alignment is. If you look at the human body, because creation's tied to the human body, from the 4 powers to the pineal gland. And we look at the planetary system. We have 4 terrestrial planets. The moving parts, to me, are the sun, the moon, and Pluto. And if you look at that alignment of the body, the sun is the root chakra, Mercury, Venus, Earth, the heart chakra, Mars is the throat chakra, the third eye is the moon, hence it's very guarded. That's why people are going to have problems if they say they're going there. And then Pluto is the crown chakra. But when you think about creation and you think about the universe in 4 parts, God created the universe in 4 powers. Then we go to the earth. It's inner core, outer core, mantle, crust, 4 directions, 4 bloodlines, 4 parts of the brain, 4 parts of the heart, 4 humors. These creations of 4 to me were a linear process to pineal gland, which if you take the bone that's in our head and put that bone on a flat surface, that's a 1/4 slant. This is information I have, and nobody's ever talked about that. And I have these mountains talking to me in Lake Lure, North Carolina, which I think is one of the 4 corners of the world, because I found 2 river quadrants on each side of a granite monolith. There's a vortex very close. There's a bottomless pool around the corner that they've never found the bottom, which if you ever looked in biblically what a bottomless pool was meant to be is sucking out negative energy, demons. That bottomless pool is set up around the corner of the granite monolith to suck out the negative energy in the air. Mm-hmm. Now, hence, the broad river that flows through the 2 quadrant rivers, the 1 quadrant river is the lake. And those rivers have kind of dispersed as Lake Lure. But that river still today flows into the Atlantic Ocean through the Santee and starts at the Intercontinental Divide. So pre-flood, this broad river would have been one of the 4 rivers that flowed into Atlantis. So if you find the 4 corners, which I think the same crew created each quadrant on Earth, hence why I would have this bloodline that I've been told. So these are things that are happening as well. It's like, how do we tie all this discovery and information in together?
Yeah, I think it takes more than, it's like each person gets a puzzle piece and then we all have to combine it together to make the full puzzle piece. And this is where it's really important to work with people who are ethical and also realizing that you don't have all the pieces. You have a piece of the puzzle. And it's 100%. Really important I notice a lot is like competition, and I don't understand it. That's why I said, like, I don't really like advertising I channel 12D beings, because then it has this like competition energy. It's like, oh, I channel 7D, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we can all come together and create a wholeness, which is what we're trying to achieve, which is we all have the same goal. The same goal is we don't like the world we live in. We don't like the war. We don't like people starving to death. We don't like trafficking. We don't like any of it. And we want to create this world to be back into God consciousness instead of the Luciferian. That's the common goal.
Yeah, 100%. Because even with me, even though I've been in entertainment, and I'm not out here trying to sell wolf tickets or anything like that, but when I mention some of these things I've been told to certain people in the community, they're like, huh? And I'm looking at them like, I have no idea what the hell this is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is just, I'm just showing up. But if this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to do it.
That's right.
I have to do it.
Well, it runs through your veins. It's like someone asked me one day, they said, do you ever just want to give up? And I'm like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. What keeps you going? It runs through your veins. You can't, there's something that's literally a driving force that you can't deny. It's not just this made up scenario. It's like it lives and breathes within you. And you can't just one day be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Now, do you hypnotize people?
Yes.
I don't know if I can be hypnotized.
Do you sleep?
Barely.
Well, so here's a little secret. The Arcturians updated my voice box. So I actually turn on a technology called theta codes. And when I do regressions, I don't do regressions with just normal people. They're always like out of this world regressions. And they're about 2 to 3 hours. We should give it a whirl, John.
When do you want to do that?
Well, we can schedule whatever you want. But
okay.
Yeah, I mean, people have been in, I had a really beautiful download. It had been back in January of Mintaka. I was in the shower and I turned left and had full memory, cognitive memory come through. It's always when I turn left. I don't know why, but it just happens to be it just pops through. And, yeah, I had full cognitive memory of my life in Mintaka. And, I even offered a free workshop for people where they could I guided people through their own, through a hypnosis way to allow them to have their own experience. That's another thing for me is I think that it's really important as a hypnotherapist to make sure that everybody has their own experience, and I don't allow my own perspective and my own belief systems to influence their experience in a regression. So yeah, no, we should do it. Yeah,
because I'm trying to get every aspect I can, because I think the thing with Debbie kind of blew me away a little bit. The billions and billions of years old thing. Its foundational, and I think we discussed that, is I'm thinking about 4.6 billion years ago when creation started. So if you look at around the country where, at the beginning of creation during the Precambrian era, the most spiritual places are the oldest places, right? And hence Blue Ridge Mountains is one of the most developed areas in, the Precambrian era. I mean, that's on the government website, and science doesn't even know that I can use that information against them to show the truth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's, because we talked about you near the Sauk's tribe, what do you call it, Sioux tribe, or
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
by you, I mean, that area, through the Montana area. That area is the beginning of creation as well, with the Montana megaliths. There's supposed to be a portal there in
Montana's
Montana.
a great grid. It's a great grid. Yeah, my husband was in doing some lines in Kalispell, which is just outside of Glacier National Park. And such good energy. I had incredible downloads in Montana. I would move there in a heartbeat. I really like Montana.
Now, you were walking, I saw a video, you were walking around somewhere and you said it was a moon something.
Yeah, we went to Craters of the Moon this weekend. Craters of the Moon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a national park, and it's a volcanic area about an hour and a half from where I live. And yeah, we went and hiked this on Sunday. I had a friend here from out of town that's also a spiritual healer as well, and we went and explored some places around where I live.
Well, I mean, it was just interesting looking at the structure of the rocks and so forth. Now, do you mess with stones? You know, because I talk about stones just being a transmitter. You know, and
I have one right now. Yeah.
What is that?
This is a fire labyrinth. My friend actually gave it to me. Yeah, it actually helps with intuition and protection. I'm really into crystals. I think crystals are very fascinating. And from what I know in regressions that I've spoken to higher selves, is that the technology of crystals has yet to be, well, I mean, it could be now. This was maybe a year ago. The technology of crystals isn't being used at its full potential, and that crystals are our consciousness. So this is an essential, I mean, this feels like an energy of a she. It's very divine feminine energy. Mm-hmm. And so it's very fascinating. But what I understood from the higher self is that we don't use the technology yet of crystals. And I do believe that people like myself, I don't think I'm the person that's going to do it, but I think people like myself are going to start downloading those ways of using crystals as a technology.
Well, the crystals is just, I think they're transmitters, and I wear different ones based on the situation I may be in. And a lot of times, if I'm around some dark energy, the crystals will get hot. Mm-hmm. Very, very hot. Mm-hmm. What do you think that is telling you?
I mean, I think that sometimes when energy gets hot, like when I do energy work and it's a lot of energy and there's a lot of density that's coming off, I get hot. Like I get a lot of hot, but hot doesn't necessarily, it's not like a one size fits all, right? So sometimes hot means like a lot of energy, someone who just holds a lot of frequency. But when a crystal, I think gets like hot, or cold, it's the way of communication. So I know when I tell my clients, like, how do you activate a crystal? But after you smudge it, I blow on it 3 times and then I communicate with it. I say, I'm setting the intention that you are going to help me with XYZ, right? Whatever that is. And then the crystal, I wait for the crystal to give me some form of a signal. So whether it gets cold, whether it gets warm, it just varies. I don't think necessarily like hot and cold necessarily mean like bad versus good versus evil. You know what I'm saying? I think that that's maybe a signal for you. I don't think it's necessarily a signal for everybody, because sometimes when I get hot, it's almost also like a signal of like I'm getting some love and comfort energy, not necessarily like always it is cold. I do notice that when I pull energy out of the body, a lot of times it will go like really hot and then really cold, right? So like you can actually feel the energy move from like hot to cold. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it goes really cold to really, really warm, just depending on what the body feels. I just think it just is different alchemies and being able to move the energy. Also, like for me, dense energy sometimes will feel sticky, like almost like tarry. Where like, I don't know if you ever cried and your tears kind of feel sandy. You ever had like that where you're just like, you feel like you have sand in your eyes when you cry? You ever experienced that? Mm-hmm. To me, that's anger, because sand to me is like grainy. In the subconscious, when I do symbolic hypnosis, a lot of times people will use the terminology grainy, sticky, because the mind works in metaphors. So when I do symbolic hypnosis, sometimes people will describe energy or like a belief system or an energy, because the mind doesn't actually use words, right? We know that the mind uses symbols, metaphors. I don't know if you've ever like received metaphors, but like a lot of times, even in the Bible, you see metaphors and not an actual like what words technically mean. And the mind is fascinating, because once you are able to take the metaphor out of the mind and what the energy is holding, like a negative belief of like, anger or whatever someone's experience has a color, has a shape, has a texture, has a feeling, right? And they're all twined into this belief system. Once that's shifted and you can alchemize it, the energy goes to sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes soft, fluffy. But typically negative energy is jagged or grainy or sticky. So I don't necessarily go by hot, cold because I've seen it both ways.
When you think about the response of that, just the fact that they're responding, right? That is probably something we need to figure out how to get in sync. I know that it's a transmitter to potentially maybe where this stone has come from, the higher beings and so forth. Do you think there's certain stones that people shouldn't wear? How do you find the right stone to wear?
When I go into a crystal shop, I think that I don't go very often, but I just tell people make sure your energy is grounded before you go into a crystal shop. And I think you're magnetically drawn to certain things, right? So like sometimes you're like, ooh, I like this one. And you'll pick it up and maybe it feels hot. Maybe it feels cold, or maybe you kind of get dizzy, right? And so I think it's just really based on how you're feeling with it. I think moldavite is probably the only one I'd be like, don't really wear moldavite unless you really want to like skyrocket your ascension journey, because that one will do that for you.
That's what I've been wearing for years.
Moldavite?
7-ounce moldavite. And the only reason I'm not wearing it now is because it broke.
Oh, no.
So I got to get another setting for it, and I can wear it. But is what I've been wearing for a long, long time. Yeah,
it's a great stone. Yeah, if you're willing to make some big changes in your life and dive into your shadow and do the work, I think it's a great. I mean, I would wear moldavite. That wouldn't scare me, but not everybody's ready to let go of their old life.
Well, it's funny too, when I think about that. Sometimes when I would wear the moldavite and my mind would get a little bit crazy and look a little erratic, I would take it off, and then I would settle back down. What do you think that means when your mind gets like that?
When the mind starts to get kind of erratic, I feel like that's typically either some type of an entity or underworld being or technology, because your mind. I mean, obviously the moldavite is triggering something in your mind. So immediately when you said that, I actually heard vampiric energies. So what I do is I take my left hand on my solar plexus and my right hand on my heart, and I connect and I call upon the 7 rays of light in a spinning fan motion, connecting into my crown chakra. In a fan motion, I call upon the 7 rays of light to clear, remove, cut, denounce any blueprints, karmic contracts, vampiric cords, vampiric energies, and I send any vampiric energies to the light back to source. And I just allow the energy to move. And then I just ask for my emotional body. I say, emotional body, give me a deep yawn, burp, sneeze, or a sigh to let me know when it's completed. I don't have any, so I'm not going to do that, but that's usually what I do. And you'll yawn or you'll sneeze or things like that. And that's a really quick way to clear your energy very quickly.
So you said you felt what when I said that?
That it was a vampiric energy.
That was messing with me?
Yep.
Is it still hanging around?
No, I gotta know. Muscle tested. No.
Because what I've found out too is like, if you eliminate fear, you eliminate trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that some of these entities are pissed off because I have no fear.
Yeah. I can always tell when I start to get vampiric energies, like out in public and stuff, I'll get lightheaded or dizzy. Really, really like all of a sudden. And I'll be like, do I have something attached to me? And then I got a yes. And then I go, I shield again. And then I clear the energy. I can usually tell when energies try to attach. So people who are beings of light that are connected to source, that is something that's going to happen is vampiric cords. They're going to try to attach so that they can siphon that energy. Have you ever seen Monsters, Inc.? The movie Monsters, Inc. from Disney?
Yes.
It's a lot like that, right? So that's very symbolic how it works. So when they scream and they fill the little tanks up and then they use the tank for something, it's what they do. That's exactly how it works. So they take the energy that's from a pure energy of light, which would be children, right? And they siphon the energy. So pure energy of light would be someone's connected to God's source. They siphon the energy so they can use it towards something different. What do you think, John?
You don't see anything else around me, huh?
All aura in the clear. Yes. All aura. Energy cleared in the body. No. All circuits in the clear. No. Checking circuits. Calling upon the spark spirits to go through. If I have your consent, John, I'll go ahead and clear circuits.
Yes, you have my consent.
Okay. The spark spirits go through and clear John's circuits to be circulating correctly. And emotional body, give me a deep yawn, burp, sneeze, or a sigh when you're completed. Yeah, I just saw your head. Do you feel the energy move? Oh yeah, here we go. Making circuits attach and moving, starting to move more freely. Asking the bio and genetic system to start functioning at a higher level of frequency, activating now. Move the energy higher and higher. Spirit, amplify this frequency by 20,000. How are you feeling, John?
Feel good.
Amplify frequency higher. Connecting into divine frequency of source, activating those codes now. Yeah. Woo. How are you feeling, John?
I'm feeling good. What are you feeling over there?
I feel good. This is how I move energy. I tell energy where to move and how to move, and it moves. We're just an avatar. We're just ready to move it, right? Or in the clear, systems in the clear. Echo spirits, move any nano frequency out of John's system and denouncing and removing those frequencies now. Moving energy. Nano frequency deactivated. Moving energy through the crown system and starting to activate God frequencies now into John's system. Activating now. John's emotional body, give me a deep yawn to show that you're being moved through the energy and embodying the frequency now. There you go. Thank you. There you go. Grounding frequency into the earth's frequency and into your earth chakra. Moving the energy down, connecting into your system. All systems in the clear. Biogenetic system, amplify the frequency of John's aura by 20,000. Making his energy bigger. Making his energy frequency move into higher dimensional spaces and also reach more masses through the earth frequency plane. Activating now. Take a deep yawn, John. There's one of my energy hacks for you. We just moved energy in like 2 minutes.
I can feel it. I can feel it through my legs. Just feel the cold chills in my legs and my hands.
Yeah, your energy is still expanding. And can you feel it in your crown chakra? I can feel you're kind of moving. It's like, especially in this left eye, it's like pulling energy. Good. All circuits in the clear. Any energy in spark spirits? Show me any dense frequency in John's back. So they're showing me something on the left hip. Emotional connection. Do you still sometimes not feel supported? Like I'm feeling some energy in your lower back.
What do you mean? Like my back's not supported?
No, just sometimes in life, do you feel unsupported?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just Adobe dump all files that John told you to run of not feeling supported. In emotional body, give me a deep yawn, burp, sneeze, or a sigh when that's completed. Adobe upload new files that John is always supportive and that he is divinely being guided and that he is being guided by multidimensional beings here to support him on all aspects. And he is absolutely being guided and supported. Activating that now and uploading those systems into his ego now. Completed. Thank you. Also, ego, now start to show in John's reality how supported he really is. Activating that now every single day, reminding him of his supported frequency and that he is being divinely supported every single day. Spark spirits, remove all frequency in John's left hip of being unsupported in the physical realm and the physical body, pulling the energy out. Clearing and cutting all frequency, removing implant out of the left side. So what I'm just doing is I'm actually weaving light from source, which is a blue and yellow light, through the bottom part of your hip on the left side. We can remove that density. So I'm starting to put the thread in. We're going to start coating that. And my guys are going to start moving that thread through your system in a spiral frequency. Can you feel that energy?
Feeling my legs or something going on.
All parallels, all contracts, all karmic connections of this unsupportive through all timelines, spaces, and dimensions. Collapsing now. Grounding the frequency. Grounding energy. Completed.
Now, who was that?
That's just a form of light language of my higher self.
Was that what someone you were channeling, or?
No, that's just me.
It's just you. How'd you find that?
My light language activated about 3 years ago, and I actually didn't know anybody that spoke it, but I knew that it moved energy, and I knew it moved energy fast. And then my next step was I started to receive little threads of light, and I started to weave that in the body. And with the activation of the light language, with the light, it would actually bring those codes. And in the light, there's, from what I can see, it looks like sacred geometry, different types of sacred geometry that go into the body and remove the density, and then recode so that the energy will hold, so that you don't put that energy back into your body.
Interesting. Because when I did a journey, and when I was in that state, and I blocked everybody away from me. I blocked everybody. And I just reacted differently and had this whole tribe of people come down. Whoever I was talking to during this journey, I was like, check, yes, check, yes, check. And they were like, you're talking very systematically. So like when you were speaking like that, that kind of resonated with me, like I've heard that before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because your body's just a system. It's just a computer system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you strengthened me.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, thank you.
I'm glad you liked it. If everything is instantaneous, then so is energy. So if you command energy to move, it should move.
Now, if I give you light energy through your crown chakra, you okay with that? We can try that. All right.
Started to feel now.
What does that feel like?
Relax.
Like euphoric?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Divine love, divine essence. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I tried to fill up your whole body, worked on your crown.
It filled all the way up. I felt it all the way to my toes, all the way to my crown. So yeah, it worked. Yep.
And I tried to clean out your crown chakra a little bit for you. So it's I've been practicing this everybody I speak to, and it works. It works. And that's the energy I have coming out of my body. What do you think that energy does for you?
I think that energy brings in that calming, like that divine masculine of like protection and calming energy. Like, I mean, you can probably watch back and watch my shoulders kind of drop and my energy kind of more relaxed.
Because a lot of spiritual people, I won't name names, but a lot of spiritual people have some attachments.
Yes, they do.
And when I go in, if it's hard for me to push it through an area, there's something going on there.
Yeah, that's you probably feel like a resistance. I felt like you moved through my body really quickly.
Yeah, because I ran it down your right leg first, came back up, ran it down your left leg, and then I brought it up through here. And I think I went through your left arm first, then back around your right arm, and then I brought it up through here.
Did you find any spots that were sticky there, John?
No, I mean, it seemed pretty fluid. I didn't see any hiccups. There was something there's something like in between the back of your head and here. There's something like right between the back of your head into your crown chakra. There's something that kind of got a little hung up right here. I don't know what that is, but that was really the only place I had a hiccup. Maybe that's why
my ears ring.
Did what they're doing or something. Some kind of like, let me think. There's just a little piece of something in there that might need to be worked on.
Got it. I'll clear it out.
Yeah, there's something. I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's anything major. It's just something like I don't know.
Probably an implant, which I have to remove implants all the time. So yeah, I'll just get it off.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. If I drive, my husband works outside of an hour from Denver. He builds power lines for a living. Well, he's an inspector, and every time I drive by the Denver airport, it's like I just, and I'm like, oh, and my light language goes off like crazy. It just. Yeah, it's just like, it's usually avian. It's just like, it just moves the energy off. So yeah, I'll just light language it and it'll probably move it through.
Now, did you reincarnate in Peru one time?
Yes. Actually, that was one of my first remembrances, was being in Peru on the black beaches. I was on a black beach.
For some reason that popped in my head.
Yeah. So I was a chief at the time. I had to sacrifice one of my daughters, for the gods. And I was very angry about it. And then shortly after that, it flooded and we ended up in a cave, and I opened up the cave door in essentially a light language. I moved the cave, it opened and then it closed, and I had to put all my people in a cave, and we had to hide in a cave. I have no idea how long we ended up being there, but it was one of my first.
Like that's where that voice is from. And when you're doing the energy moving.
Could be. Yeah. It's probably more galactic energy though, wouldn't you say?
Well, the essence of the voice and the tone of the voice, there's something to that.
Tribally?
Yeah. Just the tone of it gave me something, which is interesting. Because if there's a cell in you, right, and you can trigger that emotion, you're pulling that from somewhere.
I also speak a lot of avian. It's typically what I usually go through, which is like it's way fast and moves energy very differently than what I just did with you.
Huh. I was told that I was here, that I picked my incarnation. I'm here to make sure Atlantis doesn't happen again.
Yeah. How symbolic is what we're dealing with right now? Very symbolic to what happened with Atlantis. Have you ever taken a witching stick and gone out to the place that you're talking about to see which direction the portal is?
I think I've been in the middle of it.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a place called the Light Center that's up there. And there's a place called Meditation Rock that has a 3 billion year old rock.
Wow.
There. And I've done energy work there. And I tell the story about my brother where you have seizures, you have the brain issue and you have seizures.
Oh, epilepsy.
Epilepsy, yes. He has epilepsy. So when I took him there October last year, and as soon as I put my hand over top of his head, there's shit started pouring out of his nose. Stuff started pouring out his ears. He started sweating, and he could only stand it for about 5 minutes. Now, at that time, he was about 265 pounds. Now he's down to 205, and he hasn't had any more seizures.
Wow.
So it's it almost like is a supercharger for me in that area for some reason. You know what I'm saying? It's very wild because sometimes I walk around here and I just feel like I'm glowing anyway. But it's to handle that and run a business can be difficult. Can be very, very difficult. And I don't think people realize that. And I think maybe we should get into those types of stories as well. You know, telling some background of some of these struggles and so forth. I think that could really open some eyes for some people in this community. Now, if we want to find you and someone wants to check you out, where do we get your information from?
I'm on all social media platforms at 3 _CCCS_healing. You can also find me at www.3cccsshealing.com. And the 3 C's stands for consciously connecting, consciously choosing connection. That's what my 3 C's stands for.
Well, this has been Michelle Hobson, and she is the real deal. But appreciate everybody listening. My name is John Edmonds Cosma, CEO of Bang Productions, owner of the TikTok Live Creator Network Agency, and host of the Unimpressed podcast. Until next time.